the process of creating a reality for oneself, what we typically refer to as leading life, is merely one guiding the infinite intelligence, which is life unmanifested, or rather, life manifesting. Although this is not guiding in the typical sense, it's guiding in that possibilities are infinite, and so you must intentionally align to the one you'd prefer to experience as your personal reality. In that way, experience which is happening within you, as you, is never dictated by seemingly external circumstances, but rather remains a pure extension of your self-experience. By the way, our personal reality, our individual reality, is always extending from our inner state, despite what we might believe about the matter. So, what's more common nowadays is that we think poorly. Beyond that, we live poorly because we've come to define our environment as such. Hence, you hear people saying things like, "Oh, I am so poor." By the way, that's someone claiming an identity. Or the more typical phrase, "We live in poverty." And therefore, our own individual experience within will be that of poverty, regardless of the particular environment without. This happens because we've come to prime our mind for such an experience. Whether this happens intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously, makes no difference. The mindset eventually becomes rooted in lack, and survival becomes fundamental to our experience. But of course, all of this is happening internally. And so, here's the thing now. Here's the way out. We all possess the key to conscious, intentional living. And the key that I'm referring to is mind. More particularly, a mind which is not identified with itself. A mind which is not bound by memory or comfort. A quiet mind which can afford one clarity of perception. A perspective which is not rigid in time but rather flows flexibly with it. Because the flow is essentially the unfolding of experience. And this is very much relevant, given that experience allows perception to occur. And so, our job, if I may call it that, is simply to pay attention, meticulously so, and not to anything in particular, just generally speaking, universally speaking. In that way, we stand a less chance of missing out on anything worth perceiving. This can only happen if we are not already fixated with our own ideas about reality. Because when we are, we can only perceive the world through those limited ideas, which in turn limit our experience. However, this ability to narrow our perception can be very, very useful, especially when we have to be intentional, perhaps for the purpose of a particular creation, but never, and I mean never, beyond that. Because this beautiful gift can quickly become a nightmare if we come to identify with the function itself. That's to say, we become narrow-minded beings. And that's the ironic trap of conceptualization. Although it can help us navigate and identify things within our reality, it can also reduce the wholeness of reality down to those conceptions, which are only held in memory. And memory is limited. There's only so much of it. And so, the memory of those conceptions will become our scope of perception, which, by the way, is very and unrealistically far from the full picture. And so I will take this moment to suggest that we begin embracing the reality of existence. Because for most of us, there's what's out there, and what's out there in a literal sense is the reality of things, but what's in here is how we relate to those things, and more often than not, we kind of like experience this clash because we resist. We want to control, which is an illusion that stems from fear. It's not necessarily a bad thing to want to dictate one's reality or one's experience of reality, which is why we are alive. We are co-creators after all, but there's certain things that align more than others, at least as far as true self is concerned. And every experience is leading you towards that realization of self, because the realization of self will afford you the capacity to embrace the self in the ways in which it was meant to be embraced. And that's you living out your purpose, basically. And so the key is alignment. And I would define the word alignment from a mechanical point of view and say it boils down to integrity, aligning one's thoughts, actions, and intentions. But there's a simpler definition. This one friend of mine, old friend and business partner, once gave me his definition of alignment, which at the time really resonated with me because I was fixated on something similar, although I worded differently. He described alignment as not doing anything. And at the time I was strongly interested in the idea of neutralization, that's to say, living from a neutral point, being unbiased about experience. And I mean all experience. I mean the process of experience as a whole now, taking it as it comes. And because I wasn't emotionally attached, there was no fear in experiencing reality. I could see what was working and what was detrimental to my well-being. And so that point of neutrality, of not being judgmental towards reality, which basically is a reflection of uh, of a fragmented inner state. That's when you have likes and dislikes, and some dislikes are meant to be experienced, but because we don't prefer to experience them, mentally speaking, now we are cut off from the possibility of evolution, individually speaking. And so alignment is living from a point of surrender. Basically, you don't know anything, because that's the truth. You really don't know anything. Whatever you think you know, you were taught, and what you were taught was observation made by another person. No. I apologize for that. Anyways, I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not in the mood anymore. Yes, alignment. If there's anything that you can take from this video, then it's that point. Alignment. Let go of the need to control, because you are not in control, really. What you can truly control is your level of involvement. But don't let it get distorted. Don't make it a thing of attachment, which is really a manifestation of desperation that stems from fear fundamentally. But there's a reality beyond that, beyond mind activity, beyond memory. Don't live from your mind, because such a life is a life lived within enslavement, within a prison-like environment, because that's what happens when you live from mind. You are trapped within the scope of your memory, and nothing truly new can ever come from that. You'll just keep reliving past moments in different ways, of course, in different expressions, because time is moving, it's flowing, and the flow will change inevitably, ultimately, even though the ingredients are the same. And with that being said, my beautiful friend, I wish you well on this journey. Don't take yourself too seriously. You're not as important as you think, but again, that's somewhat paradoxical, because you are important in that experience is possible through you. Evolution is possible through you. Animals cannot evolve, but you can, and so you bear the responsibility of seeing to the fact, or factualization, which is basically the realization of your truth. You don't have to wait for someone like me to let you know that you must align. You must trust the flow of life without prejudice, without preconceived notions, but experiencing it as a child would experience life with curiosity. I mean, you were once a child. It's just that you think you are not anymore, but you will forever remain a child of life, a child of creation, a child of the Creator. And the class is always in session, so best you pay attention. That way, you can learn all that you need to learn. And time, the length is relative. It's only a matter of willingness. The willingness to surrender to a power which is beyond you. The power that keeps you alive. I mean, you don't have to think about being alive, and yet you think that your thinking is the most important thing. You place it above everything else, which is insane to me, because it's not really rooted in truth, in reality. It's only information recycling itself, information that you've experienced in the past. Or beforehand. Let me not use the word past, because in truth that's also just an illusion which is formed as a concept, or which was formed as a concept. But concepts in themselves are limited by definition, because they are supposed to be conclusions of some idea relating to reality. But yes, let me not stretch this video further than I need to. If you found value in this, I do implore you to subscribe. That would be highly appreciated, because in that way this channel can reach a wider audience. And yeah, that's it from me today. I trust that you are in good hands, because life is in your hands and you are alive. With that being said, love and light.